guys, welcome back to the Binging and Bickering podcast. As you can see, Dan and I are dressed like assholes, and
We're not dressed like assholes. We're dressed like fucking archaeologists.
just the hats though, not the
Yeah,
not the full attire.
archaeologists.
You're wearing a fucking
Archaeologists
Mickey
wouldn't
Mouse
be
shirt.
wearing a fucking somebody touching my spaghetti shirt.
Yeah.
They might though.
So we're dressed like assholes. But anyway,
yeah, we're kind of dressed like assholes.
so today, as we said, we're talking about Indiana Jones, very famous franchise. Where do you stand on Indiana Jones? Are you with the hype?
I love Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford's one of my favorite actors. I just really think he's just as a person, he's a very interesting, just human being. On top of being just like an amazing like actor, just like having the career he's had, where he's had all these iconic characters like Indiana Jones, Han Solo, Rick Deckard, whoever else. And he kind of like picks and chooses which one he is excited about. Indiana Jones is a character where where Harrison Ford is actually like really excited to like play the role, and it's one that he's like actively involved in working with and doing. And so like you can kind of tell in his performance as Indiana Jones. So like I love them. I love the movies. I watched them as a young kid, and I've always kind of gone back to them.
Yeah.
I really enjoy them, and yeah, like I'm all aboard the Indiana Jones hype train.
Well, Spielberg and Lucas, who are the creators of the character and franchise, they both have so much shit attached to their names.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not my favorite of theirs. I love the character and the action set pieces throughout the saga. I'm not as keen on the humor throughout. I don't know if it holds up for me as well, but we're not here to review the fucking franchise. It's very famous. It's acclaimed for a reason. I get why people love it. That's why we decided to talk about it.
Yeah. So the topics we're going to cover today are the most kick-ass Indiana Jones moment, the best Indy sidekick, and we're going to talk a little bit about Indiana Jones 5, the unreleased, soon to be conclusion.
I think it's 2022 right now.
Yeah, it was supposed to kind of be out by this year, but they had delays in filming, and then COVID happened, so there were even further delays in like filming of literally everything else. So now it's been pushed back, but we'll get to that later. So we're all Indy today, so let's just get right into it. What is your most badass Indiana Jones moment?
So I love the opening of 2 when it's kind of like a Bond spin-off a little bit at the beginning with like the sit down, the meeting, he gets poisoned, there's the shootout. But you want to know why I'm not choosing it? Because Kate Capshaw is a part of it.
Yeah.
It's not her fault, but what's Willie Smith?
Willie.
Oh my God. Well, I will touch on her more later, but she's a part of it, so that immediately excludes it. But I think I gotta go with it's a quick moment, but I think it just defines the character and how freaking awesome he is the sword fight, the sword fight that doesn't happen in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't know, the moment in that movie is a big action sequence
About halfway
happening.
through the movie.
Yeah. And Indy comes across this guy who's wielding this big-ass sword, and he's twirling it in front of him. And Indy, instead of fighting him like you expect him to do, just pulls out his gun and shoots him dead. And it's freaking hilarious. It's probably the funniest moment in the franchise and the most badass. But the reason why it's so great also is the story.
Right.
And, again, if you guys don't know, they brought that swordsman in who was a professional on the side. And they had this big sequence planned where Indy was going to fight him with his lasso, and they were going to have this awesome back and forth. Well, lo and behold, on the day they were shooting it, Harrison Ford came down with food poisoning, and when it came time to do the stunt, he said fuck that, and he just pulled out his gun, and he sent off a stunt round or whatever and put the guy down. And that all happened due to an improvised moment because Harrison Ford was too sick. And it's arguably the most defining moment of Indiana Jones because he's a little bit of a scumbag. He's a
Right.
womanizer.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of encapsulates that, is like, he no honor in that moment. He just shoots the guy.
No.
You don't bring a knife to a gunfight. It's fantastic.
I just like the look on his face, like as the crowd parts. Like you can tell, like once you know that Harrison Ford was actually sick during that scene, you can see it in his face.
Mm-hmm.
But you watching Indy is like, are you kidding me? Like I'm in the midst of like trying to find like my girlfriend in like trapped in like a laundry basket,
Yeah.
and I don't have time for this. So
Yeah.
like I'm just gonna shoot you because I have a loaded gun and
Mhm.
you don't. Like I love how once you know the actual story, it's like wow, he really does look sick. But then in the moment, it's like Indy's a badass.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have time for like this bullshit.
Did you notice the homage they do to it in Temple of Doom?
Temple of Doom.
It's very quick, but
Right.
there's the two guys with the swords, and he reaches for his gun. His gun's not there, and they have a quick fight, and he scares him off.
Which is funny because only on my most recent watch of Indiana Jones, I just found out that Temple of Doom is a prequel. If you already knew this, like I applaud
Well,
you.
to start with saying,
Well,
like,
I know it says
19
1935. The Raiders takes place in
Yeah.
1936, and Last Crusade is in
38?
38,
I think so.
and then Crystal Skull is 56. But we'll kind
Temple of Doom's the point here,
Kind of
yeah.
we'll kind of talk about that too. But yeah, Temple of Doom is a prequel, and that comes before. So my watch through of that movie made me kind of appreciate Temple of Doom more because up until Crystal Skull or whatever, it's like Temple of Doom is like the worst Indiana Jones movie, like without a doubt. With it's got some cool set pieces, it's whatever, but like there's kind of a regression in like Indy's character, and it's because it's like, well, yeah, it took place before. Like, of course, like he doesn't feel this way yet, or of course he's not doing these things yet. Of course, Marion Ravenwood's not in the picture yet, and he's still kind of sleeping around with a bunch of women
Yeah.
around the planet. It's because he hasn't found the Ark of the Covenant yet. Like the first movie had not happened, so that made me appreciate Temple of Doom more. However, it's still not my top and badass most indie moment. I love the Kali Ma part. It's probably the one I like reference the most. It's like if I ever like grabbed my chest or somebody else's chest, I'm most likely saying Kali Ma.
To
But
pull out their heart.
right, exactly. Pull out their still beating heart
Yeah.
and lower them into a pit of lava. But my favorite, like most badass, like Indiana Jones moment is in Last Crusade. That is my favorite Indiana Jones movie as well.
I would agree.
Is the tank battle, like where Indy's trying to save his dad and Marcus Brody from inside of a Nazi tank on their way to the place where the Holy Grail is, and they get into this big gigantic fight with these Nazis, and there's a tank there. And like, there's a point where Indy's like hanging off the side, and he's like stuck by his like
Yeah,
his
dragged.
satchel
Mhm.
is like like caught on like the side gun of the tank, and like you think he's gonna get crushed, and he's like getting dragged alongside of it, and then the tank turns away, and he's able to go up there and like fight the Nazi guy, and then like the tank starts approaching a cliff, and like Indy's dad gets out, Marcus gets out, Belloc was following behind, and he's fine. But then there's you think that Indy like goes down over the cliff with the Nazi in the tank, and then Indy gets out, and he like climbs back up, and he walks up behind like his dad Brody and Belloc.
You mean Salah?
Salah.
Belloc
is the
is
bad
the
guy in the first
one.
movie. Yeah,
Gimli.
Salam. Gimli.
Gimli. Yeah.
So he walks up behind them, and they're all like looking like, oh my god, like Indy's gone, and then he's just like, like, like he can't believe it himself, but he's also like funny because it's Harrison Ford and it's Indy and it's just classic. And then like his dad hugs him, and it could be like you could probably count Indy could probably count on his hand like how many times his dad has hugged him like in his entire life, and like just the look on his face that his dad was like hugging him was great. And then they're like, okay, like we're all alive, like let's go. And Indy's like, I almost just fell off a cliff in a tank. Like we just had like literally a 10-minute long
Yeah.
like film sequence. Um, and he's like sitting on the ground like I just need to rest, and they're all like, all right, let's go. And of course his hat rolls back somehow, just rolls back to his feet because it's not Indy without his hat. And I just love that scene. Everything about it was just like great.
Yeah, I didn't mention that one because I assumed it was going to be talked about. It also has a really cool, like modern versus Western thing going on with the horses
Yeah,
and the tanks riding alongside each other and the battle.
and
It's
camels,
great.
because
And camels.
Salam wants camels, and Indy says no
No
camels,
camels.
but he grabs them
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah. That's a good moment. I'm trying to
Yeah.
think if there's any others we forgot, but those are probably the standout ones. His and we talk yeah. The mine sequence is really cool in 2, but yeah, I think those are the best ones. I would agree.
I um the opening scene of Crystal Skull is good. I like when he's like escaping like that warehouse, and then immediately ruined by like the nuke scene, nuke the fridge scene right after. But like I like the warehouse scene, and then the rest of that movie's kind of a train wreck.
All those movies have like really good openings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's slide on to the next category then.
Yeah.
We covered that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're going with the tank sequence, and I'm going with the pretty much, which isn't even a fucking like fight sequence. He just shoots a guy in cold blood.
Yeah.
But it's great.
But I mean, the moment behind it's a really great story,
Story
and
makes
it's
it even
a
better.
it's a great moment in the movie. And Raiders is an iconic film for
Yeah.
many reasons, but that is one of them.
So we will move on to our second bullet point, which is favorite sidekick. And I would say that's one of the things that's kind of the crux of the Indy franchise is every movie he has kind of different people helping him out. So I think that's how we came up with this one is there's
Yeah.
a lot of I wouldn't say the antagonists are particularly I don't want to use the word memorable, but they're not what I think of when I remember the Indy franchise. It's more like the adventures they go on,
Right.
the misadventures, and
It's a lot
and
more-
who he does it with.
It's a lot more hero centric. It's like there's not. I mean, to compare it to Star Wars, like there's no Vader and Emperor scenes. Like there's it's not
Yeah.
it's not a big grand adventure with a cast of characters. It's always focused on Indy and like what's happening to him, and like all of these like ancient puzzles that he has to solve are always like the biggest dangers.
Yeah, for as many faults as Temple of Doom has, it's probably the one with the best villain, quote unquote, because the other ones are just more like, oh, they're Nazis, they're bad guys.
Right, like
But it works.
they're
It
kind of
works.
faceless enemies.
Yeah.
But the Kalima guy, like yeah,
He
like,
gets his
that's-
moment,
That's
yeah.
that's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like that guy is like
He's ripping hearts out.
He's
love when
ripping
he gets
hearts
ripped apart
out.
by crocodiles.
yeah, and the Wilhelm scream is used
Perfectly.
very perfectly in that sense.
So who's your favorite sidekick?
I mean, Last Crusade is my favorite Indiana Jones movie for a lot of reasons. But one of those reasons is because of Sean Connery's portrayal as Henry Jones Sr., Indiana Jones's dad. And I think the dynamic between him and Harrison Ford in that third movie is just so great. And that relationship, seeing why like Indiana Jones like grew up the way he did, you find out why he calls himself Indiana. Like you find out like why he kind of turned into the person he is, why he's like a womanizer, why he does these things, why he loves history. It's because of the relationship with his dad, and like to see like not only the evolution of Indy's character, but the evolution of his dad's character as well, and the dynamic that they have together on screen. Like that's why I love
Yeah.
Last Crusade, and I think Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr. is Indy's best sidekick.
I would agree. He's almost like the antithesis to Indiana Jones in a lot of ways too, because Indy did everything in his power to, not be like his dad.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, their chemistry is really, really good. I, the one scene that I find really fucking funny is when they're tied up and who's the the Nazi scientist name who betrays them? I guess it really doesn't matter. But
Uh, uh, the blonde woman.
yes,
The hell's her name?
obviously she's a Nazi. But
Yeah.
but when she is telling Henry, when she's telling Indiana that like, oh, I had a wonderful time, whatever, and Henry hears it and he's like, I did as well. And he's
Yeah,
like,
because
and they
he
both slept with her.
they both slept with her. Yeah, I'm
They're
trying to think.
Eskimo brothers and father and son. It's
yeah,
hilarious.
it's awesome. I'm trying to think of her name. Is it? It's not Vanessa. No, I I can hear it because like at the end of the movie when she's falling down the fucking crack trying to go for the
Yeah, for the Grail.
for the
she
Grail
falls.
and she falls. I can't think of what it is and
But we know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
She knows as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they know as well.
yeah.
I would agree. It's Henry Jones. He supplies a lot of comedic relief. I love the umbrella scene with when he scares the birds up,
Yeah.
which is exactly what Indy wouldn't do. But I'll add on. Short Round.
Short
is a
Round's great.
One.
Yeah.
He's besides the Yankees hat. But
For obvious reasons.
He's Spielberg is really good with kids in
Yeah,
movies. He's
well-
really good with kid actors.
And
Did the same
short
thing
short
at
round
Jurassic Park, Ready Player One.
short round is what's his name from
Goonies.
Goonies.
He's the kid
What's
in
his name?
Data?
Data. Yeah.
Data, yeah. Real creative name on that one.
Yeah. That's a great movie too.
It
but
is.
That's where
It
it
is.
at. Well, and then Marion, Brody, and Salam are the only recurring sidekicks. Although Brody isn't really a sidekick in Raiders because he's just kind of he is a recurring character, but
He's more of a plot pusher.
right in
Yeah.
Raiders, but then in the Last Crusade he's back. Salam, he's a sidekick, but like Marion,
I would say she is like probably my number 2. That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
get to. Is she's a fucking badass.
She's
like,
awesome.
The first scene, she's drinking a guy under the table.
Yep.
And then she smacks Indy across the face, which is great because she was the perfect counter to Indy, and Kate Capshaw wasn't, because you believe that Marion was this hard girl who can kind of put him in his place. Willie just comes across as a fucking bitchy bimbo. Honestly,
She's,
like Kate Capshaw hates that character.
yeah.
Because they're like, they made me do is scream and complain the whole movie. Marion is the complete opposite. Like, she gets shit done and she helps out along the way. And she was kind of a action heroine before it was cool to be an action heroine.
And that's why it was like, of course, like Temple of Doom is a prequel. It makes more sense that he ends up with Marion because she's a lot better for him. She is not the typical damsel in distress. It's like, yes, he has to like save her in Raiders, but she does a lot on her own as well. And then of course, like they end up getting married by Crystal Skull and they have a child together. and like there's kind of like she is like the best fit for him because she's like she's willing to throw his shit back at him.
Yeah, yeah, she's probably number two, and it's no surprise. I mean, those are the two best movies.
Yeah.
So the characters surrounding him have probably the best chemistry as well.
Yeah.
All right, so that shifts us to our third topic, which is they are making an Indiana Jones 5. And
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg, Stevie Spiels,
Stevie
is
Spellburgers.
who directed all four previously, is stepping down, and he'll just be serving as an executive producer for this movie, and stepping in as I think he's writing the script as well, and as the writer director is James Mangold. And if you guys know who that is, he's done movies like Logan, 310 to Yuma, Ford versus Ferrari. He's also a very accomplished director himself. And as Dan and I were planning this show, neither of us knew this.
No, because like the bigger news is that Spielberg like stepped down, and
Yeah.
it was just like it almost it's like who are they gonna get? J.J. Abrams, like the guy who saved Star Wars, but actually fucking pile drived it into the earth. He almost saved it at first, but then
Oh,
fucked
did you
it.
hear John Boyega doesn't fuck with toxic Star Wars fans?
Good, dude. Your movies suck. Sorry. They're not your fault, but you just didn't have any character development.
So, yeah.
This is an Indiana Jones thing.
See how passionate we are. Toxic Star Wars fans.
No, we're
Right.
not.
No,
we're
no, no.
just
Okay,
competent. We have brain cells.
Okay.
Okay. But
Indiana Jones.
we're talking about Indiana Jones 5. And regardless of whether, it's like knowing Mangold's resume helps, but even, it's like, yeah, like, okay, Steven Spielberg is attached as an executive producer. But should it exist after Crystal Skull? Because the biggest kind of problem is that Crystal Skull went back and touched a trilogy that probably shouldn't have been touched. And, like literally the end of Last Crusade is Indy rides into the sunset.
And the name of the movie
is The Last Crusade. Okay, and then here's why 5 is kind of... Because to me, regardless of how good 5 is an excuse to come back one more time and kill Indy. Just like Harrison Ford came back to Star Wars Episode 7 and they killed Han Solo. Also, knowing that Shia LaBeouf isn't coming back to play Mutt Williams in 5, even though he's Indy's son, and it's just going to be like old Harrison Ford. I don't know if I can like rely on, even if it's like well put together and it feels more like a classic Indiana Jones movie. Can I handle a grumpy Harrison Ford just waltzing to the grave for another adventure after the disaster that was Crystal Skull, where, interdimensional beings,
right,
aka aliens, fucking dumb, almost like ruined like the franchise. Like people forget about that one. That one is like in the top 50 of like some big gigantic 200 worst sequels of all time.
Yeah.
People hate it.
Yeah. It's not good. Yeah, so I have a couple viewpoints on it. So Logan was the perfect send off for Wolverine.
Mhm.
And that is where I feel like I get a little bit of faith, because James Mangold hadn't done, X-Men, Days of Future Past, First Class, like all those
Sure.
movies. They were all handled by different directors, and he was able to come in. He did Wolverine before, and that movie's okay, but he was able to conclude it perfectly with Logan, which is kind of it's got that old dying cowboy kind of feel to it. It was a great send-off for one of the most famous comic book characters out there that have been seen on the big screen. And, him and Hugh Jackman did it right to end it. So part of me thinks he could do the same thing with Harrison Ford because we saw Harrison Ford come back for Blade Runner 2049, and while he was a supporting character in it, he really brought his all, and he showed it in that movie. Force Awakens, it kind of felt like he was rehashing it. So it's like, which Indiana Jones are we getting? Are we getting a Harrison Ford that loves the script and he's showing up to play? Or is he kind of collecting a payday, ready to kill off Indy? So the jury's kind of out. I would prefer it just is kind of left alone. Like I said, I'm not the most gung ho about the franchise. I like it. I'll watch it if it's on. It's just not, up there with Star Wars or Lord of the Rings and other stuff with me, but it's good.
Yeah.
So I'm not clamoring for a fifth,
Hmm.
but if they can find a way to end it better than they did Crystal Skull, with kind of telling that like a similar, like I could see Mangold, he did 310 to Yuma and Ford versus Ferrari both have very heavy Western vibes. 310 to Yuma is a great Western.
Yep.
I feel like if they kind of tell that Indiana Jones is like as an old cowboy on his last rodeo sort of thing, I can get down with it. It's just the adventure needs to be engaging, and I read an article that he was really sorting through what the key theme that held Indiana Jones together, and he plans on harnessing that in the movie. So if they can do that, I'll see it. I hope they can assemble a good cast. What I don't want them to do is set up like this is the future of the Indiana Jones franchise. Like there's gonna be fucking 10 more movies like that. I'm like, we're done. I've played
Because
Uncharted.
that's the thing. You know, they were they weren't going to do that with Shia LaBeouf, like making him Indy's son. Like they kind of played with it. The very last scene of the film, like Indy's hat like blows off of a hat rack and like lands at Shia LaBeouf's feet. He picks it up and he's about to put it on, and like Indy walks down the aisle with Marion, like grabs the hat, puts it on, and then like he
Yeah.
walks into the sunset again. I guess like the biggest thing I'm worried about is like I trust Mangold and everything like that, like because I hate to bring up Star Wars again, but the biggest problem with Episode 9 was that it tried to wrap up so many unanswered questions as well as, you know, be the end to 9 movies, and it failed miserably. Indy 5 doesn't have to wrap up
Right.
5 movies, it doesn't have to wrap up unanswered questions. Its thing is like be better than 4. But are you going to be better than 4 by having like Indy's last ride? Or are you going to be better than 4 by like having another moment, a third straight movie of having him ride off into the sunset? Which I wouldn't mind because I don't want Indy to die, but like that just seems inevitable because it's being made. I just don't know what I want, and even though I feel like I want more because like Crystal Skull just wasn't good, like I want more, but like I know I shouldn't kind of feeling, and it's not that because I trust Mangold, and we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, like Harrison Ford loves this character and he loves playing him. I just don't know. Like I don't know what I
Yeah.
want.
So let me ask this question. If they had made 3, not made 4, and we're talking about doing another, the answer would be a stern no, right? You know what I
If
mean?
they
Like if they
if
ended
they
with Last Crusade and they just started talking about doing another one, I would be like,
now,
do not touch it.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think the outlier here is Crystal Skull, where we're all just like, that fucked it. Like it left a sour taste in your mouth.
exactly.
Because even so, know what? No, we're not getting back into Star Wars. We can't. We can't. We can't.
Because when
So I think we're kind of on the same page with like if they can do it justice. I mean, we're gonna see it regardless. Movies getting made.
yeah,
But I hope James Mangold can do it. I like him a lot. He has a good eye for action and he knows how to tell kind of old cowboy stories. And I'd like to see him do it justice, but we'll just see. We'll see.
because I think Indy would now be in like the 1960s. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would
makes
still
sense.
be like Cold War era, so he'd
Yeah,
probably still be
Russians.
dealing with Russians.
Huh. I do like the historical implications always. That's always my
Yeah,
favorite part.
it's awesome. They touch upon like real kind of myths and real kind of like treasures and stuff like that. And there is some sort of real myth to Crystal Skull, but then but I mean, find another myth to talk about. Don't bring aliens into a treasure hunting movie. The last time I watched that movie, I watched it with somebody who had never seen the franchise before, and she even knew how bad that movie was. So that's how bad that movie is. Like, someone who has no attachment to the characters of the franchise, like, understands that movie is just awful. So that's why, even though I'm an Indiana Jones fan that forgets the name of Salam,
I think it's
Salah. Who cares? He played Gimli in Lord of the Rings. That's his bigger role. He's just some guy who eats dates and rides camels.
I like him. I like Salah. He has a cool hat.
Yeah.
All right. Does that wrap up our Indy episode?
Yeah. Because we could go into this big, gigantic talk about, why 4 sucks, or why, like why like what we could go in depth on 5 and then talk about Star Wars and where the studios are now, and
that's what it would spiral.
all of these different spider webs that could be why Indy 5 could suck or why it wouldn't. But we're not going to. We're going to leave it off on a light note. We're going to ride off into the sunset like Last Crusade. We're going to just leave this episode alone and not tarnish our Indy episode like Crystal Skull did to actual Indy.
Exactly. So, thank you for listening. If you guys would like to participate in the conversation, comment below your most kick-ass Indy moment, your favorite sidekick of his, and what the fuck you think of Indy 5. You want to see it? Do you not want to see it? Was Crystal Skull an abomination? And
if you like Crystal Skull, tell us why. I want to know why.
Yeah, even better.
Right.
Tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah.
If you guys like what we're doing, you like our content, head on over to charactertheory.com. We will supply the link below. We write articles on there on a more micro level about classic movie characters. And I think Dan and I will drop our social media links below if you guys want to stay in touch with all the shit we're doing, all the content we're putting out, if you want to stay up to date. And do not forget to like and subscribe. I forget if I said that already.
Leave a rating and review on our audio versions on SoundCloud and iTunes. Because we love our listeners there too. We love our viewers on YouTube. And we love our listeners on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud.
Yeah, if you guys prefer listening instead of watching, head on over there. We are on there as well. Yeah, I think that covers all the bases, right?
That's it.
All right, we're talking Potter next episode.
Yeah, Harry Potter next week. That one we already know is going to be a 2-parter episode. We're going to have a big Potter conversation next week, and then we're going to bring Potter back eventually to talk more because, so many great characters in that franchise. So, since that's what we do here on Binging and
or at least
Bickering
try to do
character theory. Yeah, we'll try to do it. Potter's big, but get ready for next week. Thanks for watching and listening this week, and until next time, keep watching movies, keep watching TV, and keep reading character theory.
Yep.
And we'll catch you later.
See you guys.
See ya.
Thanks.